Welcome to r/Entitled Parents, where we share stories of moms or dads who think that because they have kids, they're entitled to everything, and stories about spoiled children with their entitled parents. Today's story is, Lady wants my first-class seat because my grandmother is black. Let me just say, this happened about 5 hours ago, so I'm pretty fresh on the details on this one. I told my roommates this story, and they thought I should post it here, so here we go. A little bit of backstory first. I'm white, like really white. I'm so pale I glow in photos. I can blend in with, My mother is also white, but my grandmother, her mother, is black. My mother was adopted by a black family when she was a kid. She was a foster kid and then was adopted by her foster mother, my grandmother. I don't really know much about the situation, but my mother tells me she had a happy childhood. I'm her biological daughter, so we look similar, but I don't look like the rest of my extended family, cousins, uncles, and aunts, etc. Okay, into backstory. Okay, I was flying from Guyana with my grandmother to visit her childhood village and see some extended family members. We had flown there with no issue in first class. Now, I've never flown first class before, neither had my grandmother, but since she had a ton of miles racked up, she decided to use them for this trip. My grandmother is a pretty incredible woman and takes no S from anyone, and she really saved the day here, both dealing with the parent and getting us first-class seats. So, we were waiting at the gate, boarding passes in hand. I was pretty tired. For some reason, the only flights out of the country were at midnight. We were just hanging out by the gate, doing our thing, when they called for first class, priority members, and military with active IDs to board first. Okay, we boarded, no problem there. We were getting settled on the plane, my grandmother sitting down in the window seat, and I was hefting our bags into the overhead bin. My grandmother, despite being a boss, is still an old lady who can't really lift heavy things. When I heard a throat clear behind me. It's the entitled mom, a 30-something woman with a young kid in tow, entitled kid, who is maybe 5 or 6. Now, Guyana gets a lot of really rich people coming to visit it for adventure tourism, fishing, hiking, etc. And given by the bright red sunburn and the let me talk to the manager haircut this lady had, I'm guessing she must have done something like that. Entitled mom, hi. Me, hi? Entitled mom stares at me for a moment as if expecting something. I begin to squirm a little bit. Entitled mom, that's our seats. Me, thinking we might have gotten into the wrong row. Oh, sorry, hang on, let me check my boarding pass. Entitled mom, well, it's not actually our seats, but entitled kid here has been so good this entire trip and we're both really tired. Would you mind switching seats with us? I'll hold him in my lap during the flight. We're in coach. Me, no, I'm sorry, I want to sit next to my grandmother and these tickets were really expensive. Maybe ask someone else? Entitled mom, where's your grandmother? I point to my grandmother who is looking at the safety card and really isn't paying attention to the conversation. Me, that's her. Entitled mom. She scoffs like I'm playing a prank on her. There's no way that's your grandmother. You're lying. Me, no, I'm really not, ma'am. She's my grandmother and I'd like to stay with her. Entitled mom, getting red in the face. She's not your grandmother. This is ridiculous. Entitled kid is starting to realize that he might not get to sit in first class and starts to cry. It's also pretty late, so he's probably tired and cranky. Entitled kid, I want to sit down, mommy. Entitled mom, I know, sweetie, I'll get this all worked out. She turns back to me. How dare you cause my child to cry? Give us your seat, you liar. Me, no, I paid for these seats. I'm not going to give them up. Entitled kid starts crying louder and this gets my grandmother's attention. I quickly explain what's going on and my grandmother begins to stand up to confront this lady. My grandmother, excuse me, but you cannot sit here. This is my grandbaby and she said she doesn't want to give up her seat. Entitled mom, oh, she is not your grandchild, you're black. My grandmother gets silent for a moment. She gets this look in her eye that I've seen many times when I was a kid, when I was misbehaving around her. As a side note, we've had people giving us weird looks in public because we're so close. We both know that it's not really normal for a white kid to have a black grandmother, and my mother and grandmother have had issues in the past about them being related, because my mom is white and her mom is black. But we've never had anyone say it so directly or so rudely. My grandmother, So, she's my grandchild. Doesn't matter to you about how or why. Now leave. We are sitting together in the seats we paid for. Entitled mom. Excuse me? Of course it matters. You're lying so she won't give us her seat. The both of you should give your seats to me for being liars. I stand there, shocked. Entitled kid starts crying louder, and my grandmother looks like she's about to start throwing punches. It was then that a flight attendant came by, since this lady standing in the aisle is causing a long line, and no one was moving or boarding the plane. Flight attendant. Excuse me? What seems to be the problem here? Entitled mom. These people took our boarding passes. They're sitting in our seats. Flight attendant. Is that true? My grandmother quickly explains the situation. Just the boarding pass part, not the racist part. And flight attendant checks everyone's IDs and boarding passes. It's obvious that entitled mom is lying about the whole thing. Flight attendant confronts entitled mom. Flight attendant. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to please go to your assigned seat so that others can board the plane. Entitled mom. This girl is lying. She's black. They're not related. Flight attendant. She finally gets why this lady is being such a butt and frowns. Mrs. Entitled mom, you'll need to exit the aircraft immediately. Entitled mom. Excuse me? Flight attendant. This kind of behavior will not be tolerated on this airline. Please gather your things and leave the plane. We'll schedule you on a different flight. Entitled kid. Mommy, are we not going home? Entitled mom. No, we are, sweetie. She faces flight attendant and starts screaming, and I mean screaming bloody murder. She yells about us lying, the unfair treatment, etc., etc. Flight attendant has to call security to drag entitled mom kicking and screaming off the plane. Entitled kid was wailing, watching his mother get dragged off the plane. Before security could gather him as well, he approached me and starts punching me in the upper leg. Granted, he's a little kid, but I had some nasty sunburn there and it hurt like the dickens. I yelped, and security had to drag entitled kid off the plane just like his mother. The kid even managed to bite a security guard as he was going out. After the whole thing, flight attendant turns to us and apologizes for everything, and says that we'll be reimbursed for the cost of the tickets. The rest of the flight was uneventful and we landed safely. We got free food, which was nice, and my grandmother just called and said since she used miles we didn't get reimbursed, but they did give us a $600 voucher for the next flight on that airline. Nice. What I really don't get is that Guyana has a predominantly African and Indian population. Why go somewhere filled with people you obviously don't like? Anyways, that's the whole story. It was so wild I just had to share it. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree when it comes to that horrible kid and his mother. My grandmother and I have already made a booking to fly on that same airline again, by the way. Another story is about the girl, entitled parent of which defends son shooting her boyfriend. Backstory. So this is about my own mom, henceforth our entitled parent. Entitled parent raised me, but my brother still ended up with dad, and entitled parent developed an unhealthy obsession with my bro. Like, entitled parent would always make him call her mommy and kiss her on the mouth. She'd write him creepy letters about how mommy is the only woman who could really love you, and or go into graphic detail about giving birth to him in birthday cards. This happened a year ago. Entitled child came to visit for spring break. Entitled parent doesn't have time to spend with him, so boyfriend and me have to entertain him. We take him to the beach, get him lunch, and let him ride in boyfriend's truck bed. Entitled child gets home and realizes he can't find his phone. I call it. It's on, but we can't hear it in the house. I suggest entitled child checks the truck. He insists it can't be there. He decides it'll just turn up and goes and plays video games. Next morning, entitled child slams my door open while I'm still sleeping. I sleep naked, so I rush to make sure I'm all covered up. Entitled child proceeds to ransack my room, taking things of mine he likes, saying I can have my stuff back when I give his phone back. I call entitled parent. She tells me to just find his phone for him. Boyfriend comes back over, we look in his truck bed, sure enough, there's entitled child's phone. Entitled child insists we must have stolen it and planted it back there after. Fast forward, entitled parent realizes having me entertain entitled child isn't the best plan, so she buys him a new toy he wants to entertain himself with, a pellet gun. Now, this wasn't just some airsoft gun with some soft pellets and an orange tip. No. They got this thing from a hunting store. It was scoped and loaded with pellets made of lead that were designed to burst upon contact to kill small prey. Meanwhile, my boyfriend and I are hanging out at my house, and my boyfriend gets a message asking to buy one of his hatchets. He was an aspiring blacksmith, which happens to be one he previously left at my house. He goes to get it from where he left, and it's just gone. Entitled Child had an obsession with weapons, including hatchets, so we can safely assume he took it. Boyfriend goes up to the media room to confront Entitled Child and ask for the hatchet back. Entitled Child claims he doesn't even know what a hatchet is. Boyfriend tries to argue, but eventually decides it's easier to entertain the obvious lie and say, "Fine, then you won't mind if I just look around the room for it." Entitled Child becomes instantly agitated and attempts to make a case that Boyfriend and I stole his phone, so how dare he be accused of stealing now, and that he didn't want us in his room because we might steal something else. Heated words are exchanged and it escalates to Entitled Child pointing his new toy gun at Boyfriend. Boyfriend retreats back to me. Now it's my turn. I think I can go and try to rationalize with Entitled Child. As soon as I get to his door, he's pointing his pellet gun at me. I may be 7 feet away, but he's still looking through his scope. He begins on a tirade of accusations, profanities, rationalizations, and threats. Apparently, my presence is threatening to him, and he informs me that since I have been warned that I will be shot if I do not leave, it will be my fault if I get shot. I insult his masculinity on the basis that it's pretty sad if he feels threatened by his unarmed teen sister standing 7 feet away, and you can visibly see the conflict on his face of trying to decide how to be a bad A. At this point, BF comes to investigate the yelling and to remind me that this was a mission for peace. But then I look around the room. Entitled Child's been shooting the walls and there's effing stab marks in the couch. We'd later find he was trying to hide things in the couch cushions, including the hatchet. Now, I know Entitled Parent is too vain to tolerate having her expertly selected furniture destroyed. I'm also smart enough to know I'll be the one getting chewed out for not stopping him if I walk away now. So, I put faith in that Entitled Child probably wouldn't be stupid enough to shoot his own sister. And I was right. Instead, Entitled Child shot my boyfriend. Boyfriend grabs a heavy goblet he keeps his dice in and throws it at Entitled Child, but smashes the window behind him instead. Boyfriend then grabs Entitled Child's gun and throws it over the railing of the stairs. A piece of both the gun and the wall cracks off. He then throws Entitled Child to the ground and threatens him, which admittedly was all bad, but he did just get shot. Me and Boyfriend then quickly leave and take the gun. We go to Entitled Parent, who is at work a few minutes drive away, and explain what happened. Boyfriend even drops his pants in the middle of Entitled Parent's car lot to show off his freshly made new orifice. She listens calmly and then asks for the gun back and sees it's a little bit banged up. She starts making aggressive remarks about how it's just a BB and you didn't have to break his toy. Boyfriend replies with a casual remark about how it's actually not a toy, it's a gun. May not have been a good idea to buy him a gun. He even offers to take him to a shooting range after tensions have calmed down if he really wants to use a gun. Entitled Parent is offended on a profound level. How dare Boyfriend imply she's a bad mother or that getting him a toy was a bad idea? She says that Boyfriend is lucky she isn't calling the police for assaulting her son, destruction of property, and trespassing. Entitled Parent proclaims that legally Boyfriend is in the wrong because Entitled Child gave him a verbal warning. That Boyfriend and I are to blame for not better entertaining Entitled Child. She throws the gun into the back of her trunk and slams it shut, letting us know her intention of taking it back to the store to have it replaced, and then giving it back to Entitled Child, and that if they won't replace it, Boyfriend has to get him a new one. Boyfriend starts to protest, but Entitled Parent is already in her car and rushing to console Entitled Child. Boyfriend drops me off at home and leaves. Entitled Parent confronts me, giving me the choice to help her extort my boyfriend or have him arrested, or I can sleep on the street. I tried to insist that Entitled Child was in the wrong and that she needed to teach Entitled Child a life lesson that it's not okay to shoot people over petty squabbles. She becomes offended again. I even find the stolen hatchet poorly hidden in his room as evidence. When presented with said evidence, Entitled Parent kicked me out for the night and I spend most of my night wandering downtown in winter, where I might add, I get propositioned twice. Eventually, Entitled Parent calls me at 2 a.m., furious that I haven't come home yet. Like, WTF. I think she was expecting I'd be so grateful she let me back in, I just dropped the subject of my boyfriend being shot. But I didn't. The more I try to reason with Entitled Parent, the more she insists I admit she's right, in that Entitled Child was so provoked by my boyfriend's presence that he had no choice but to shoot. Also that the BB just left a harmless hole in his leg, and that it must have bounced out after leaving a half-inch fleshy chasm in his leg. I have a hard time professing BS though, so I just couldn't do it. Entitled parent then puts her fingers in her ears and starts shouting la la la, I can't hear you to anything I say. She periodically stomps off to her room, only to re-emerge to yell how wrong and stupid I am. And when I try to say anything back in response, it's right back to I don't care, I can't hear you. I'm the kid in this situation, but I am 140% done with this immature BS. I call up my boyfriend to help me temporarily retreat. He gets there, and as we're walking to his truck, entitled parent starts yelling through the window. I tell boyfriend to ignore her, we're just going to go. Entitled parent then busts out the screen of her bedroom window, sending it sailing into the bushes below, and hangs herself halfway out her window, yelling at us how we're scammers and we're trashy. We get to the truck and start to get in, and entitled parent starts yelling that if I leave with my boyfriend, it's kidnapping, and she's going to call the police. So, I get in the truck, we drive a few blocks away, and then we call the police and meet them back there. Me and boyfriend give our statements of what happened. Entitled parent starts regaling the cops with her inspiring tale. Her poor, very young daughter was under the spell of a beastly teenage boy. He'd make me savagely attack entitled parent on a daily basis, and entitled child bravely tried to defend entitled parent's property while boyfriend was on a violent marijuana-induced rampage. But entitled child was attacked himself. Entitled parent even starts lying about my age, making fun of my looks and style of dress and hobbies, lying about my grades, demeanor, sex life, general relationships with friends and family, anything to attack my character and make us seem less credible. Luckily, she didn't have enough time to coach entitled child, so his and her stories were wildly different. Entitled child told the police almost the same story I and my boyfriend did, just with a sprinkling of what he thought were justifications. The police just don't care about this S. Cannot blame them one bit. They tell us unless boyfriend wants to press charges, there's not much they can do. But they do suggest he go to a doctor and get x-rays, and from there decide what to do. Entitled parent is furious and yelling about how the police are corrupt. She'd later go on to accuse boyfriend of being part of a big town-wide conspiracy against her. Boyfriend did get those x-rays a few days later. Sure enough, pellet was still in there, all nestled up cozy to his knee, with a chance of it breaking apart someday and the lead in the pellet poisoning him. And nothing was ever done about it.